Well, good evening, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that we have had a very eventful week here at Redstone Glen this week with stuff going on, not only from Mother Nature, but also getting kids off to school. And we had some time aside that we wanted to take a moment and interview our friend Susan Kesler Simpson, who's here with us this evening.
Thank you so much for coming down.
No problem.
And joining us here and talk about your new book.
Any excuse to come to Redstone.
Oh,
Susan's been in our fold for a very long time, and it was sort of nice to have an opportunity to have some of our casual conversations that we share around tables or over the phone at guild meetings, and just bring a more intimate look into what you've been working on the last couple of years, really, as you've written several books in weaving. But now we have a new one coming out.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
You know, I have a hard time remembering when you first started coming down to Manny's. When did you all meet each other?
I would say it's been at least 10, 12 years.
Maybe longer.
Maybe even
because we've been here
Maybe
for 6
longer.
years.
It's
So
longer than that.
the time flies, and it might even be 15 years now.
I would say, because we moved here, and I think my husband found your website.
Is that
and
right?
Found Manning's, and so I decided I knew how to weave, but I wanted to learn again because it had been a while.
Sure.
So we came down and visited Manning's, and you had a class going, and so I decided this was where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And I am so glad you did.
Yeah.
Oh, me too.
So, so glad you did because you've become a wonderful friend. Thank you.
You too.
Yeah.
I can sort of remember a number of years ago after you had put out probably your first 2 books, you and Susan started having conversations because you were sampling and sampling and sampling, and it just seemed like the right point in your life to sort of suggest that you take that on yourself.
Well, what happened was this guy. I've been doing stuff for your books.
Yes, indeed you have.
And I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I had a number of my thoughts, and then other people say, I like so many books out there, but they're not written for me. They're up here, and I am down here. So I came to Tom and I said, why can't you write a book for beginners? Because most of us are in that realm. And you, in your own inimitable fashion, looked at me and said, you do it.
It's your idea. You do it.
You do it.
Sure.
So I went home and I told my husband, I said, you're not going to believe what Tom said. And I told Dave, and he looked at me and he said, so do it.
It's just a book. Just do it. Just write a book.
So glad that he's encouraging. And
he is.
Yeah.
Yes.
He is. And I kind of toyed with it for a while, and I thought, I can't do that. And I thought, well, let's do some projects.
Sure. Yeah. So it sort of led into your first book.
Right.
And I feel like that process of writing the first book really got your toes in the water, and it got you thinking about Overshot very differently, probably through the writing of the first book.
Well, Overshot was always my favorite.
Yeah.
And I can remember taking the Overshot class with you, and as soon as I sat down at the loom and you told us what to do, I remember thinking, that's all it is?
I think most people have that realization.
It's not so scary.
Yeah,
No,
we look at the complexity of Overshot, especially what Tom tends to favor, which are some of the 18th century and 19th century coverlets that look so over the top ornate, and the scale of it is so grandiose that
It's awful.
people think it's far more complex than it is. Yeah.
And I was intimidated, and I love the old coverlets.
Yeah.
But they smell.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I don't know, but they do. And so I thought, okay, if I'm going to have a coverlet, I'm just going to have to make it myself.
Sure.
Which I did.
Yeah.
And so I got into Overshot. I still love Overshot. Preferably 4 harness. And when I get into the 5 or the 8, it gets a little busy for me.
If you're not familiar with Susan's first book, it is aptly written, Overshot, Simply Understanding the Weave Structure, which is exactly what your goal was to take something that was seemingly difficult and make it digestible for a newer weaver to pick up and use.
Simply.
I want to just jump in here at this point because I remember when you were writing this book, I had been asked to give a talk to the Weavers Guild in New York City. And I got on the train. You had given me a copy of the manuscript. And I'm reading this on the train and thinking, this is so needed. You did exactly what you set out to do. You explained it so clearly and so much for the beginning weaver. So for anybody who has sort of veered into twills and then going, oh, you know what? This is not that scary. This is just like a little hybrid on the original twill structure, and this is how you weave it, and this is, you know, the perimeters that you need to go by.
Yeah.
And A, B, C, bingo, you got a project.
Exactly
It's
right.
So well written.
Yeah.
Susan. I
Thank
loved
you.
it.
And one of the things that I really wanted to put in there was, so often people will weave overshot and then the pattern just falls off the side. And I really included a chapter on how to add a border so that your work is framed. It's not just half of an image on this side and then, you know, it's a mess.
I share that same view with you, and I use as an analogy for a lot of our weavers. It'd be like placing a really beautiful photo in a frame without giving it that generous matte to keep the eye going into the main focus or the main composition.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
excellent. So great. Now, in writing the first book, you certainly probably came up with loads of other ideas that maybe didn't fit the course of the first book, but certainly you had to bank it and hold on to it for a little bit later.
The first book has a lot of projects because I figured I wrote one book and it would be one book.
Yeah. I did it. I wrote a book.
Yes, so you thought.
So I thought.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Weren't you so funny?
Yeah, that was hysterical, wasn't it? Yeah. So then, I think I took your class in shadow weave, and I maybe it was a couple of years later, and I thought, okay, shadow weave, some things I'm not getting it all here, and I can remember sitting down because I work with Fiberworks Bronze, working on the computer, because they tell you how to do up and they tell you how to do down, and that's about it.
That's it. Done.
What if it's up and down and up and down and down and up?
And it's not clearly written in a lot of manuscripts.
No,
I mean,
it is not.
It's confusing.
So I had to totally dissect it, and I remember coming down and talking with you about, am I doing this correctly?
Yes.
And I'll never forget your response because you looked at it and you studied it and you said, yeah, I think so. And I remember thinking, you think so? What are you talking about? You're Tom Knisley. You're supposed to know this. But it was fun.
I want to make stuff up.
Now you all know. But I really did learn. I guess, if you really want to learn something, write a book on it.
Jump into it. Yeah.
Because you have to get so immersed into it. And I feel so comfortable now with shadow weave.
Oh, yeah.
But you're not afraid to weave a sample and then look at the sample and go, no, that's not working. How do I make this work?
Yeah.
How do I make it work? And the beauty of a computer program is a lot of that can be worked out even before you sit down to the loom. And so that's how the second book came about. And
for folks, I'm going to throw this up on the screen just so that you get a chance. We were mostly talking about Overshot, but I'm going to throw this up here on the screen so that you can see it. This is Susan's other book, Simply Overshot. Again, the projects in here are super gorgeous. I think that there's a lot of great use of color, which I can appreciate in them. But the thing that I most love about this is that the pieces, they still echo shadow weave like we know it, but there's a lot more playful use of color, which is just fun.
And I try to make the projects simple enough that people feel like they've accomplished something.
Sure, absolutely.
It's not like they get it that too simple, but it's just something that say I actually succeeded. And what my purpose for the books is, then you can go to these more
elaborate
projects, and you can grow from this if you
totally.
And, some people are what we call recipe weavers, and that's what they want to do. And there's a lot of recipes here.
Yep, but you added books to the available market that I think allow people to even transition through them. There are some in here that a beginner certainly would not touch, and there are others that they can grow into. Right.
Yeah. Now the third book again is Tom's fault.
It's Tom's fault.
It's always Tom's fault. We'll blame Tom.
Yeah.
But I was sitting at your house one day, and there was a sheaf. I think you did it on purpose. There was some papers there, And you said, oh, you can look at that.
Uh-huh.
And so I did.
Just push it your
And just-
direction a little
Yeah, he
bit.
did. He did. He
A
kind of
little
pushed
bit,
it over
yeah.
there.
Subtle.
And I'm sitting there looking at it, and you were gone a long time. So I think you were hiding around the corner watching me. And I thought, this is interesting. This
Mhm.
is really interesting. And so when you came back, I said, can I get a copy of this?
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. And next thing I know, I have a Helene Bress book.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
And her book is difficult if you don't know weaving very
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And the colors in the book, the pictures are pretty bad.
Yeah, unfortunately, Helene was just a wonderful, wonderful fiber
Brilliant.
artist all around, like
Brilliant.
in lots of in scholar.
Yeah.
But she was publishing in a time period where it was
Right.
expensive to publish. The quality was, not what we would consider
No.
our standard for today. But
No.
the heart of it is all
The
really
heart of
good
it was
stuff. Yeah.
amazing. And what she did was a series of samples.
Mm-hmm.
And so Tom gave me a book, and I dissected that book.
Sure.
I went through, and I really went through those and studied the project, studied the weave structures and stuff,
Mhm.
how she did all this. And I thought, this has got to be made available for people in a more usable fashion.
Sure.
In a current
modern
current.
sort of application. Yeah.
So-
You know, when the weaving book came out, and I want to say it was like 1978, she was also using.
I'm sorry,
in
wasn't
her
it
graph-
77?
Maybe.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
The things
You weren't
you're
even
doing.
thought of.
I know. Just giving you a hard
But
time.
when that came out, her graphics and the drafts and things
Mhm.
didn't follow sort of modern convention that we would look at today.
Right.
So if you're familiar, folks, with looking at interweave, long thread media publications, hand woven, or anything, let's say within the last 20 years, you can look at the draft and say, yeah, I can figure this out. But Helene was doing things a little bit differently, and so you had to really sort of dissect all
I
of that.
really did.
And then just bring it around so the layperson just coming into this would clearly understand what
Sure.
they're doing.
And I
Sure.
think most weavers can look in this book, and they can, if they're, and it's another situation of don't argue with the book, just do what it says, and
Right.
it'll work.
It will work.
Even if you don't understand why you're doing it,
Yeah.
it will work when you get it on. And it's just, some of those projects were just amazing and
Mhm.
just great to do. I was so excited with
Yeah.
how they turned out. So
Yeah.
it
That's
was
awesome.
wonderful.
So the last book that we're referring to is this Creative Treadling with Overshot. Now,
Correct.
again, you went with a good title because it tells you exactly what we're talking about here, which
Right.
is examining overshot and the traditional threading type aspect of it. But
Right.
what you're doing is you're changing the fabric surface with lots of different variations with the treadling and tie-up,
Correct.
right? And possibly variations in how we would typically throw our shuttle for
Right.
overshot and the
Right.
scale of the yarn. Yeah.
Exactly. And what I did when I started that book, the first thing I did was I
Mhm.
set the loom up, and with a long warp,
Mhm.
put on Star of Bethlehem,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked my way through that book,
Mhm.
doing, changing the tie-up, doing those samples so that I could see how it changed and all those images. And if you want to show that picture.
The one that I think you're talking to about is the one that had everything sort of scaled out on the same page. Is that the one you're talking about that had all the different samples side by side?
Yes.
Is that the one we're talking about?
Yes.
Do you know where that is in the book? Because the
in the
image I
front.
have is a little bit blurred. Ah, this is the one we need. I'm going to throw this under the document viewer so you can see a nice, clear view of it. But what Susan's referring to is the fact that she's got one threading here, and now what we have an opportunity to see is lots of variations in all kinds of structures. I mean, we're not just talking about little changes. You're talking
No.
about everything from rep weave to lace and in between. So there's a nice spread here of 16 total samples within the book that gives us some nice variations on color and how the pattern is presenting itself. I think that's just really beautiful.
Right. I really, that helped me to
Mhm.
understand. And then I could look at those and I could see front and back.
Yep.
So I knew what it would work with, what type of project it would work with, and what project that needed to be protected on the backside was
Mhm.
more of an upholstery or something. It was great. And then I got that all done before I even started.
I think that's a really key point especially for weavers that are sort of new to the scene, you can be presented with a whole bunch of really beautiful structures. You open up a pattern book and you throw it on your loom, but if you're not intimately familiar with it, there can be situations where you say, I didn't know that this was supposed to be a one-sided fabric. This was supposed to be for a scarf, and probably this was better suited for upholstery or pillows because of some characteristics with that structure. And so here we get to see that basically the same imagery, but depending on how the structure changes, it might be more applicable for different applications.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so much fun doing this. I had a great time. So thank you for being annoying.
Yeah. No, I think this is great. So I had a chance to sort of grab some photographs out of the book, and I wanted to sort of piecemeal through some stuff here. And you talk about what we're looking at, because when we look at this, the first thing most weavers are going to question is, why do I see two different colors here, Susan?
That was my favorite piece
of
all time.
Here we go.
There it is.
And I'm going to switch to the main camera because you got to see how beautiful this piece is when it's all stretched out. Here we go.
There's the piece, and that's the red side.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the piece, and that's the blue side.
No way.
Love this.
Is that not the coolest thing? And
Yeah.
I actually did a trifold screen. I did 3 panels and put in a trifold screen. One side's blue and one side's purple.
Yeah.
And I was just absolutely thought this was the most fun way to do Overshot. It's heavier, but it makes a nice placemat or a table runner. I don't know that I'd do it in a scarf unless maybe Tencel might soften it.
Oh, that would be lovely.
So how would you define this treadling structure? Is it more based in double weave, or is it...
I didn't think of it as double weave.
It's more of like it's definitely a 3 shuttle.
Yes,
patterning,
it's a 3 shuttle
right?
pattern, and but the pattern it's pretty much the same on both sides.
Oh,
it's
great!
Just such a great. It is just.
It's almost like you're weaving this. For any of you who have woven 1/3 twills, 3/1 twills, but you've got that tabby that's just running in between there, the blocks of things. What it does do is it creates a little bit longer float than the sort of normal overshot. But you know, with the scale of the threads that you're using, this is such a beautiful and serviceable piece. I agree with you.
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't think that the floats sort of take away from its practical nature of being able to use it and worry about it snagging.
It's durable. I mean, I wouldn't use it as upholstery, I don't think. Well, why would you want to?
Why would you want to?
I mean, really, it has to be someplace where you can show
But
it
definitely,
off.
I think the biggest saleable point on these is that you're creating one piece that has crazy versatility. And you know, we always go to, especially maybe as women, like, oh, I can be this for one season and this for another season.
Exactly.
I totally get it.
Company's coming. Let's flip it over. It's got crumbs on one side.
Well, and my friends that have seen it have just been like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
You know, it is a little bit of magic in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's one of my favorite pieces.
This piece that comes up, I love showing the sort of overall picture that's happening here. But as you get a little bit closer in detail, this one, to this particular piece, I love what you did with the color usage here, because there's a lot more going on than just a white warp and a dark colored weft. It appears that what we got, and I can actually scale this up so we can look even closer at it. You've got, again, a 3 shuttle weave here where you're alternating not only a natural tabby, but you also have what looks like a yellow and sort of a red carrying through it.
Yes.
This is so neat in the way that it's used. The yellow is following the red in a way that it's creating almost like a ripple effect of color, which is super, super engaging to look at.
Yeah, it's play with color, have fun with color. Don't get so stuck in a rut. I mean, I tended to go towards green a lot. Which you all know.
Did you find in writing this book how to communicate what's going on in some of these pieces to be a challenge, because they do vary so much from?
No, not really. I
convention.
Tried to very simply explain.
Mm-hmm.
I really did not get into any heavy detail, any heavy weaving terminology. Because I want to, again, simply.
Definitely. Let's look at another piece here. I love this little model. She's so fabulous. I don't know who it is. Kathy F. Kaus, who we interviewed just a little while ago. who does a lot of the photography for Tom's book, also did the photography for your book.
Yes, she's awesome.
Yeah, and so she had this sweet little model come in and do this piece. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this one, because it is so graphic.
It's a shadow weave. It's the
Mhm.
Overshot done as a shadow weave. And I think the thing I like about this particular piece is such a unique structure.
Ah, okay.
And it tells in the book how to weave it and create it, and then to put the two pieces together so that, which do you want? This page?
You know what, Liz, I'm going to throw something in the document viewer because I want you to kind of see, although the model is really beautiful, it's nice to see what it looked like sort of coming off of the loom. And even on this piece, when you can see it all laid out here, that, even if it wasn't a poncho, it would be a beautiful piece
Oh,
in
sure.
itself. Like, I could
Sure.
imagine that as a baby blanket, or
Oh,
even
absolutely.
a blanket for myself. Just scale
Or
everything up
Make
to
it long
proportion.
and have a beautiful shawl.
Yeah.
Exactly. But the uniqueness is, this actually does go over the head, and then
Mhm.
that portion, that V, falls forward. So
Yeah.
it's unusual. And I've been known to be out in public and see somebody walk by with an outfit and
Yeah.
sit down and sketch it out real fast and figure out how I can do it. When I
Why
get
not?
home.
I mean, we get our inspiration from all different areas. I can't tell you how many times I was there counting threads or trying to count blocks in
Yes.
like Pier 1
Mhm.
with a
Oh, yeah.
placemat that I
Oh.
liked. I'm like, I wonder how they did that.
How
Yeah.
did they do that?
Yeah.
Exactly.
What I love that you did with this book, though, Susan, is, and we're talking about shadow weave here. So, it's a different weave structure than Overshot, but you very clearly explain how to take a traditional Overshot threading.
Mhm.
Because when I look at this, I think, okay, this is Overshot. It looks like an Overshot pattern, but it's
Mhm.
shadow weave. You clearly explain how to create a profile draft from the original
Mhm.
and then assign a totally new weave structure to it. So when you're looking at that, as well as, and I hope we get a chance to talk about the
Mhm.
complementary plane weave too.
Oh, that one.
How you're taking that, because you say, hey, there's no long floats on here. If this was a coverlet, the
It'd be
cat might
impractical.
It would be a
just-
problem.
It would be a problem, but
Yeah.
this is no problem at all.
No.
Yeah, another one that I had, when you mentioned that complementary plane weave, I absolutely
Mhm.
love it. Keep
Yep.
thinking I have to write a book on that so I can do. a
Let's
bunch
hold this
of it.
piece out because this is just lovely.
It's just beautiful.
But, and it's a heavier piece, but
Yeah.
there's one side of it, and then you turn it, and
Ta-da!
ta-da, magic again.
Yeah.
And the
This is just
colors.
such beautiful, rich colors. I feel like it reminds me of
Yeah.
like a Scottish thistle or something.
Oh, I called it avocado and something.
Mhm.
But I love, love, love.
I'm going to throw this under the
piece.
document viewer so people can see some of the beautiful details. So this is one side of the piece, and I'm going to take the contrast back a little bit so you can actually see that there are two different values of purple running through this piece. And on the flip side of it, you get these really bright, intense colors, which are just so gorgeous.
Yeah, I love this.
Yeah.
A complementary plane weave is another one of those weave structures that I think is sometimes not used as much as it should be.
Definitely. Definitely.
It has so many. There's so many things you can do, and you can do it
Mhm.
with, especially with Overshot.
Mhm.
I mean, it is the perfect weave structure to do with Overshot. 'Cause
Definitely.
you end up with such a beautiful project that you can, like Tom says, you have company coming, you got crumbs on
Definitely.
the table, flip it over. It just is
And
pretty.
I think people get kind of caught up in the title, but it really does have an appearance of plane weave to it. When you look at the structure of it,
sure.
the notion of floats don't exist any
There are no
longer. As you look
floats.
really closely here at the structure, you can see, and don't look at my nails too close because I was in the garden before we started. Every thread is interlacing over, under, but we're optically tricking the eye based on the threading with lights and darks.
Oh,
That there is a very elaborate patterning sequence happening here.
I just think
Mhm.
complimentary.
Your color usage
Yeah.
in this is just so beautiful, but folks, it looks very complex, and yet
Mhm.
this is just done on 4 shafts.
Yeah.
So
This
this
is- yeah,
in
and
Every
everybody's.
pattern in this book is done on 4 shafts.
Yep.
Is that right?
This
Every
is
pattern.
another example of the complementary plane weave that
No,
you did. No,
that
this
is
one is.
woven as brocade.
Ah, thank you for correcting me. So this one has a very similar appearance, But when you look at it a little bit closer, you can see that there's a definite sort of positive and negative happening here. And there is a much closer relation, but you can see that it is traveling over several. So,
Right.
so traveled as brocade. Thank you for correcting me,
Yeah, it is
Susan.
treadled as a brocade
Okay.
instead of, and so, sure.
Mhm.
I mean, you can tell that you have very much one side or the other side.
Sure.
So you can see that that's why I worked it in as either, a blanket or a whatever,
Sure.
two different
Sure.
projects.
Sure.
And some of them that I did were very much one-sided, but the other side was so beautiful that I actually framed that other side so people could say, okay, so maybe you're not going to put that on the table, or you're not
Yeah.
going to wear it because the floats are too long. Put it behind a glass and hang it on the wall.
Sure. Why not? Why
Yeah.
not? It should be viewed.
Because it should be viewed.
Mhm.
They're
Yeah.
too pretty to not. And I did that with. I can find that, but it's beautiful.
We
I loved it.
joke with students all the time that, sometimes a piece there's only one element that you really love, and you can take a dish towel and sell it at a local craft fair for $20 to $40 somewhere, depending on where you're located. But you stick it behind a piece of glass in a nice frame, and you can charge $300 for it as a piece of fine art. It's really in how it's presented to the viewer.
Exactly.
And some pieces, depending on how the color is and depending on how engaging, it might be more appropriately hung on a wall than it is draped around someone's neck, where everything is folding and you don't get to see the full scale view of it.
And so when you're doing something, I try not to look at anything as a failure.
Oh, absolutely.
And also keep in mind, because you put on a wide warp and you start weaving one of your projects and you go, man, I really don't like that weave structure. Then look at the book, flip through it, and change your tie-up, change your treadling, and you have not wasted that warp.
Nope.
If you're like me, I rarely put on a 2-yard warp.
I mean, yeah, the versatility of this book and the pieces in it is astonishing. But what Susan is saying is it's a treadling book. So it really doesn't matter what you plugged in for the thread, with the exception probably of the complementary plain weave, where you rely on, and shadow weave, where you rely on two different colors in the warp. If you're really just talking about solid colored threads running through them, you can have a whole lot of fun. Susan found that beautiful picture of the frame pieces. So here, this is a gorgeous presentation, and this is something you could find at any Hobby Lobby, Michael's, Joann's.
It was at a thrift store.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. It was at a store, and it was on the clearance bin.
Great.
And it was pretty ugly, actually. I brought it home. Dave repainted it and worked it up. Yeah, it was not very pretty.
That's okay.
This particular weave structure had long floats, and when I did the samples, I thought, this is prettier on the back, but these floats, it's impractical.
Yep.
So I framed them.
But you know what? You took the time as the author to do the research, look at how the structures came together. And again, it wasn't just lemons. It's lemonade when you think about how it can be used. And
absolutely,
you are relaying that ahead of time to the person who is weaving this, that here's what's going to happen, but it doesn't mean it's completely useless.
No, and this wouldn't that be a wonderful Christmas present?
Definitely.
Think about that.
Right? Yeah. Well, and you know what? That goes to be said. I'm going to turn this back up again. That's something to be said for all weavers. Don't always think about the fabric coming off the loom as your finished piece. It might be just starting its journey of what it will be in the end.
I have to relate this little story because when I was a non-traditional student at the university in the weaving class, and I said to my instructor, I want to make a garment. And she was an MFA, and she was really artsy. And she said, well, you can't do that.
But people have been doing that for thousands of years, ma'am.
I said, well, why not? And she said, well, you just can't. So I said, well, I'm going to. And her report was, well, it's your grade. But she did apologize later, and she said, you can do that. And the one good thing that came out of it was then the two instructors worked together better, and all the students were allowed to create fabric to go into the design classes.
How nice, yeah. Susan, I want to bring up a piece here that I think not only did Kathy photograph this beautifully, because I think the freesias are gorgeous. I'm a total composition girl. But again, this is one of those examples that I absolutely love the color usage, because you engaged not only a light, a medium but a dark value
Yes.
altogether. And what that does is something really special to create balance in the piece and create depth where normally it can become pretty flat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, did you play around? I mean, this is a white warp or natural
Sure.
colored warp. So did you play around much with the color placement and when the shuttles, in which order they should be doing? Or
I would like to say yes, but no.
oh, you can lie to them and tell them you did. Just kidding.
No,
Don't be Tom and lie to them.
No, it was just, I truly have been blessed because a lot of times I can look at the cones over there and I can see the finished project in my head.
Oh, good.
And
Yeah.
so a lot of people can't do that.
Yeah.
And so I kind of knew what it was going to look like when I jumped into it.
That's hard as a teacher when things like that come easily for you, because we still advocate that if you're not quite sure what's going to happen, you can look at Susan's examples. Let's actually throw this under the camera so that they can see this corner real quick.
Sure.
For me, when I see a student pick up a book, they will oftentimes flip right past that particular piece because they don't really like orange.
Yeah.
And I have to encourage them, if you really don't like orange, go photocopy this book in black and white and put your own colors in. You need to be attracted to more or influenced by more than just the color. And in this piece, it would be a shame to discount a project like this because it has such potential. I mean, you only have one color in your warp. Imagine if we're adding lots of stripes or we're adding 2 or 3 colors.
Exactly.
Or you changed your tabby color up. All of these things would just completely change the whole composition.
And that's something I love about Overshot. And I want to show this is that changing the tabby thread.
Let's hold it up too so they can see the whole piece. Okay. You'll get to see like a little snippet under the camera, but all over it's just very cheerful and beautiful.
But that's just, the color changes are just because the tabby changed.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
All right. I'm going to throw this under the document camera there.
Because you're using a small thread, the eye blends those colors. So you don't just, when the pink crosses with the green, you get a weird color. It's just amazing. And this is one thing I love about that.
Yeah, I love on these type of pieces just following. Now I'm up here. This is actually our selvage edge, but you can see if we know this is our selvage edge, it means that this block and this block has to be the same threads working here. And so you see this like diversity going through as she's changing out the tabby colors. I mean, really, what you got is in the background a whole color gamut going on.
Oh, absolutely. But in Overshot.
But in Overshot, right. So it's even, excuse me, wrong button. Yeah, so it's even more fun because all this other stuff is going on in the background. And you kept it kind of simple just using the white as your pattern color, which is sort of opposite of what most folks do.
Right.
It's very easy to just imagine throwing on something neutral and having the flexibility to change up. But you had to commit to your fringe colors. I'll hold that up again so you can see all of her fringes and see the color palette she started with.
Right. And, it's a summertime piece. I call it, I think it's Easter is what I always think is Easter.
Yeah. Oh,
Easter
sure.
eggs.
Gorgeous.
Perfect for the Easter season.
Yeah.
I just think Overshot, there's so much potential. I don't think I'll ever live long enough to, finish everything I want to do.
I don't think that you could weave everything you wanted to, even if you didn't do treadling variations. Well, I mean, that just takes it to a whole nother level.
This one is another one that, when I saw it in Helene's book, and it just blew my mind because I thought, this cannot work. This cannot work. When you're doing Overshot, you have your pattern thread, which is, for example, your warp fabric or pattern. Excuse me. Your warp is 10-2. Yes. Your warp is 10-2 cotton, and when you weave it, your tabby is your 10-2, and your pattern is your 5-2.
Correct.
Oh no, she switched it. So your warp is 10-2, and your tabby is your 5-2, and your pattern is your 10-2.
So you're reversing
what?
And I remember thinking that cannot work.
Yes.
And it creates this beautiful,
I have to hold this.
Soft.
Look how soft it
rich.
is. You can see the drape on it. It's beautiful.
I just couldn't believe it when I got it done that this was absolutely stunning. And your bright color was very softened because you're using, so I don't know. I would like to try this with different colors.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, totally.
You know,
I don't know that this is necessarily going to give the impact that it deserves over camera.
no, it,
but
it definitely would not.
But what I can tell you is that what it kind of reminds me of is like a traditional overshot that just sort of has like a haze over top of it
Yes.
to soften it and make it just seem less dramatic. You know
It
what I mean?
is.
Because overshot's all about, like traditional overshot is all about having high contrast and the pattern puffing off.
Exactly.
You don't have that
No,
here, and it's just
no.
beautiful and
The drape
delicate.
is beautiful.
Mhm.
The picture in the book, Kathy did a really good job in that.
Well,
because you
let's
can
get
see
to
it.
Let's go to it. I
Fine,
should.
but it was. I just think that would make an absolutely incredible shawl
Agreed.
for a special occasion, a wedding, or something along that lines.
Sometimes overshot gets overlooked when it comes to things that require a lot of drape to them, such as a shawl, like you're describing. Oh, here we go.
Now it
So-
came out a little orange in there. She really struggled with the color.
Well, that's okay. I mean,
That's okay.
yeah. So this is really nice because now you can really see the detail of those fine threads sitting up on the surface of the fabric.
And
Yeah.
you end up making that 10-2 your pattern,
Mm-hmm.
and then your 5-2 becomes your secondary thread, and it's just, I just think that
Yeah.
I would do something, and then my poor husband, I would go get Dave and say, "Come on, look at this," and he was not a weaver, so he would just smile and nod,
That's nice, honey.
and that was good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, another overshot sample.
And he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's really pretty."
Yeah.
But-
Susan, tell us a little bit more about this one because this has to be complimentary plain weave.
Complimentary
Yeah.
plain weave.
This is just a great photo to share with you guys because as you really look at it closely and you follow one particular weft thread, you can see it's actually engaging over
Over and under. And then
Love
the
that
other
piece.
side is very, very light.
Very light with what we see as the pattern being that
Right.
turquoise color.
Again, I complimentary plain weave is another one of my favorites. Thanks
Mhm.
to Tom.
Yep.
You know, I remember the first time I did it, and I thought, "Oh, this is great."
It is so fun.
So,
it is fun.
I'm
I'm sorry.
so happy that you use so many different patterns. I was going to say, I think you and I are on the same page. Any overshot pattern's good as long as it's Star of Bethlehem.
Well, you know, I don't know.
weave
I
that-
like those circles.
You like the little circles?
Enigma,
and things? Yeah,
Enigma.
Enigma is great. But you've used in the book a lot of different overshot
Oh, yeah.
patterns. And what were some of the sources that you
The
went to?
Hand Weaver's book was
Mhm.
one, and then of course the Marguerite Davison book.
Okay.
That is just like the Bible. And do you know I picked one of those up at a sale for $2 one day.
Oh, good for you.
So now I have two of them, and
Oh,
I'm
nice.
selfish. I'm keeping them both.
That's okay.
But those two books, and then also, if you have Fiberworks bronze, you can do name drafts. You can pull
Mhm.
down that program. You can plop in some names, and a lot of them in the first book were created that way,
Mhm.
so that it wasn't something that was just regurgitated out of another book.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I didn't do that so much with the
Mhm.
third book, with the creative treadling, because I didn't want to confuse people.
Sure. Yeah.
So I tried
Keep
to
the
stay more-
imagery familiar with what they have.
Correct.
Yeah.
Something that they're familiar with seeing. But the first book has some really odd pieces in there that are unique. But that program is
Yeah.
awesome.
One of our viewers, Kara, just complimented you and said all of these are so inspiring, especially since I love Tom's Overshot. Tom's Compliment Plain Weave was one of my favorites. So thank you,
yes.
Kara. So I have another photo here. This is one of my favorite photos from the whole book. I don't know if it's just the composition or the use of colors here, but tell us what we're looking at.
Oh.
Are these pillows? These
yes,
are pillows,
these are
yeah.
pillows.
Mhm.
And which book did that come out of? Gosh,
This is from this one.
from
Yeah.
this one.
Mm-hmm.
You're asking me something.
That's okay. To
But
be
it's a
honest with
series of
you,
3 pillows that are woven.
yeah, it's subtle, but in here, I don't know if the viewers
there's
can
a
see it. At home.
stripe.
There looks like 3 different colors working in the warp, like a medium,
Yes.
medium light, and a light. And each of these, depending on the weft color that you chose for your pattern, the stripes show up a little bit differently, but you end up getting light, medium, and dark values of the pattern colors.
Right.
Which is a neat effect to happen and give you some more versatility
Try
in the
to
warp.
encourage,
Mhm.
I do try to keep things relatively simple, but every once in a while it's nice to throw in that stripe
Totally.
so that you can say, okay, I can do this stripe and it looks really nice. It's a cool stripe.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And they were not super
Bulky.
or
Yeah.
bright or different. They
Mhm.
were three. And then, it shows the difference of using 3 different pattern threads with
Yeah.
it too. The green, the black, and then the red.
How nice.
So,
Some slight variations there.
right.
Now, you could get a similar effect. Let's say you only have the white warp. You could have changed out your pattern or your tabby thread.
Sure.
And created horizontal stripes versus
Absolutely,
vertical.
you could.
And kept the pattern thread consistent. Lots of room to change
There's
things
so
around.
many things you can do.
Yeah.
So many things you can
Yeah.
do.
Now, there's a couple more things I want to bring up here to sort of talk about. And I do want to give you a little bit of time to sort of talk because we've been holding this back for a while because getting books in, like most things at this point, is difficult. But this time we actually have them in hand.
Good.
And you were able to come in today
Yes.
and sign them for us, which is really nice of Susan.
Thank you so much.
The
Appreciate
time
that.
aside, it makes a difference to people that if you really want to get a copy of this book for yourself, even if you find like right now, this might be flying right over my head. This is a good book to have in your collection because it's going to inspire you. And although some of them seem complicated, a lot of them are digestible for a lot of different
Yes.
levels of Weaver. Yeah.
Right. And I've had one person comment, well, they're too simple, and bless her heart, I really would like to have responded and say that I didn't write it for you.
Right. I mean, the title
You
is
know,
simply.
It is
Right.
written for people who
Mhm.
want to begin to understand something a little bit more.
Totally. Yeah.
And that's important to me because Tom has been so awesome in working with beginning weavers or weavers in
Yeah.
general and explaining things. And I will say it's important to continue to learn, to continue to take
Oh, yeah.
classes, to continue
Absolutely.
working on. I will always take classes and annoy you because that's
Mhm.
what I'm here
I
for.
hope so. But you know what? I've been weaving for more than 40 years, and Susan, I'm still learning something all the time.
All the time.
Well,
All the time.
I taught you something on the turn draft.
Yeah.
And that came out in the 3rd book.
Yeah.
And my husband, who deals in math, was the one who pointed out what needed to be done.
Yeah.
So there's things like that. We never stop learning.
No.
And classes are one of the best ways,
Yeah.
to
To sort of get around that.
get into that.
Yeah.
To either teach or to take or to participate.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Now, for those of you who are at home, there's also another great resource that you can use. Susan has her own Facebook page dedicated to her Overshot books, and you called it Simply Weaving, right?
Weaving Simply.
Or Weaving Simply, excuse me.
There is a Simply Weaving.
Yeah, Weaving Simply. And this Facebook page is wonderful because not only is it a resource where we get an opportunity to sort of see some more photos, get some feedback from you. You have an opportunity. Do you actually have any? I think you had told me you had some erratas corrected
Yes,
on here.
yes.
So it's a nice sort of, from the first book, there was an error. And so as you go through, you can read some of her suggestions, see what's going on her page. Is this also a good resource for people to reach out to you should they have
Yes,
questions?
absolutely.
Okay.
You can make a comment on there. I will try to get back to you. My life's a little bit chaotic right now.
That's an
But,
understatement.
That is an understatement.
Yeah.
But no, I do try to keep up with Facebook and
Great.
so sure, and I do on that website. If you contact me, I will give you my email and my phone number. I will talk with you and help you to work things through, or if there's something you don't understand. And
That's awesome.
if you find a mistake, please tell me nicely.
Yeah.
Well,
'Cause we all make
we all
errors.
mistakes.
Yeah.
It goes to print. We can have 3 people looking at it, and you go,
And we've had.
We all
Yeah.
missed
I
it.
think I've had 3 or 4 people looking each time, and they slip by. It's I think I'm doing better, but it's a lot harder than people realize.
And that's okay. But if there's an inquiry and say, I'm reading through this, I think I have it, but I'm not quite sure, it's a good time to reach out and sort of see if
And
you
to
can
share when you've made a project, nothing makes me
yes.
happier than to be going on 4-shaft weaving and look down and go, there's my project.
I made that on my
I
book.
mean, that is so exciting.
Yeah.
And, or someone will write me and they'll say, I did 12 of those runners for Christmas presents. And it's like, you've got to be crazy.
Say,
but,
you made more than me.
but it's so exciting.
Yeah.
And, to see people actually doing it and then seeing it on Facebook. That is just, it makes
Mhm.
me feel like, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. That
So if you
learned.
want to reach out to Susan or you want to peruse her page, I did put down in the comments section where you can hop on. And when you navigate to her page, please remember, if you really want to be getting notifications for her, when you're on her page, you do need to come down here and make sure that you like the page. And that's going to guarantee that you see any updates in her feed, probably including updates on when the next book is coming out.
Yeah.
Now, I have a couple more things to sort of go over before we sort of close down this evening, which is I need to put in the comments section for you guys where you can get a copy of her autograph copy, autograph copy of your newest book, which Miss Annie has a stack of them ready to go out. So if you want the first round, we will have them. If we blow through them all, we will restock them right away, and we will
And I'll
have
come
them.
back down.
Yes, and you're coming down for our open house
I am.
on the 25th of September. So if you want to
I
get
will
a
be
chance to see Susan, ask her questions, pick up a copy in person,
And actually see
that's
the
a good
samples.
time. Yeah, the
Yes.
samples
Yeah,
are the best
samples
part.
Are just so you need
Yeah.
to feel out the shawl.
Yeah. So, in closing, anything else you'd like to share that maybe we didn't get a chance to cover?
Just to enjoy. I mean,
Yeah.
there's just so many different weave structures, and every time that I get into it, it's just I don't, I just keep weaving, and I have bins and bins and bins of
Yep.
my
Yep.
poor children. They're the ones who are going to have to deal with it, but that's something that they'll just have to deal
Neither
with.
here nor there.
Well, I'm curious, what's the next book that you've got percolating in the back of that mind?
I've got a couple, but everything kind of stopped with the fire.
Yeah.
So
Yep. But maybe some crackle coming down the cracks.
Crackle's
basically ready to be
Crackle
released.
should come out, I think, next spring.
Yeah.
Crackle Weave Simply, and that's a book that I think Crackle Weave is a structure that I think is very much aligned,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one of those where I guess I kept hearing about people saying, I don't like it, including Sarah. And I thought, okay, what is so bad about this weave structure? And then I started doing it, and I thought, okay, this is really great.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some great projects
There
in
is.
there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think all weave structures have some that hit our personalities and some that don't. And
I could show you one of them.
you know what? We're gonna totally, because I know I'm chatty. Like we've already gone over our time,
Have
but yeah, believe it, I told you it would go so fast.
Okay.
But what we will do is I will take a point when we actually know a release date for the Crackle book. I'll make sure to get everything pulled together, and we'll do
Sounds
this again.
good.
We'll have you come down and bring all the samples.
And can you bring some of the samples for the open house?
Absolutely. I will
Great. Perfect.
bring samples to the open house so
That's
you
great.
can see.
25th of September, folks. Don't miss
Absolutely.
Yep. The
Absolutely.
weather's going to be beautiful.
Please, no rain.
it. We've ordered specifically, yes, no hurricanes. Yeah.
We got it out of the way this week. Yeah.
I hope so.
Well, I want to thank everybody who joined us here this evening. And if you're watching this later, all of this stuff is going to be saved in the comments section. So if there were things that came up that we mentioned, please make sure to expand the comment section so that you see all comments, not just the most relevant or the most recent. And then you'll have an advantage of clicking on all those links that we were recommending to you.
And a
Okay.
shout out to all our friends on the West Coast who
Hi,
are
everybody.
busily making their
Yep.
dinner at this point 3 hours behind.
I saw Carol Moncheller on first thing
Hi, Carol.
when we first logged in. She's out in California. Well, also, if you have questions about the book or questions about anything else we talked about here this evening, you can also drop us an email at Redstone Glen or give us a call in the office. We'd be happy to answer anything for you. I want to
Absolutely.
thank you so much for being
Oh,
here
Yeah,
with
really.
us. This
Great.
was fun, and I know that your life is busy right now, but
It's unique right now.
it's unique.
I can't
It's
say it's
one
busy,
chapter.
but it's a chapter.
Don't you
Yeah.
think weaving gets you through some of the hardest times of our lives?
Well, I will share that I have taught my husband how to weave, and he has
He's
discovered
doing great. I
Yeah.
saw some
He
samples.
is.
Yeah,
He
he's doing
is.
super.
he's discovered there's a lot more to weaving than he had any clue.
Oh, he
But
appreciates
he
you so
is
much
he
more.
does he does.
Yeah.
He winds his warp, he slays his reed, he
Good for
threads,
Dave.
he does
Yeah.
the whole, and if I try to step in, he'll say, I'm doing it.
Oh, okay.
So, and it's
Yeah.
like, whether he'll continue once things settle down, I don't know, but
It's getting him through right now.
It's getting him through right now.
Yeah.
And that's what counts.
Well, thank you again. We really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Yay.
Everyone, have a wonderful Labor Day weekend. We hope that you safely celebrate with friends and family. Stay away from the fireworks.
Stay away from
Stay
fires.
safe. Yeah, all of that. But we'll look forward to you very shortly. The next sort of Facebook Live will shortly kick off our new book club, which we also have back in stock, which is Follow the Flock. I'll do another follow-up post on that so that you have all the specifics, or go to our website and click on my blog, and you can see all the dates of when we'll be meeting starting October 6th. All right. Everyone have a good evening, and we'll see
Good
you
night,
again very
everybody.
shortly.